So I was not nervous about my ability to participate. And when it became known that I was Governor Milliken's selection to fill that vacancy, Justice Kavanaugh, the other Tom Kavanaugh,
right, Thomas Giles
Kavanaugh called and said, "When you're in Lansing, let's get together." Very cordial guy, strong ties to the Democratic Party and so forth, but again, a person with whom I got along well.
Very well. Well, you're on this court, and it's a very interesting court, if I may say so. Not just Thomas Giles Kavanaugh, but you've got two former governors on the court. G. Menon Williams, we've talked about, was elected in 1970. The same year John Swainson actually led the ticket. Finished ahead of Soapy Williams in the voting. They both were elected. They're both on the court. You joined the court. There are other people on the court as well. Did you serve at all technically with John Swainson? Because I know he left the court shortly after I think you arrived on it.
Yes, I did not serve. John Swainson was still a member of the court when I was appointed, but he did not attend court functions. He did not participate in court activities. And I had known him and Alice, and
you'd entertained them in your home, I think.
Yes,
in Stockbridge,
right? That's true.
Right.
And you know, there was no personal animosity, but I never
actually sat with him. You never actually.
I never sat with him.
Because
never was in conference with him. He didn't attend any of the court conferences.
Because at that time he was in some trouble and in limbo, and eventually was convicted of various things and resigned from the court, right?
That's right.
And resigned while you were on the court, right?
Yes, he did resign.
At which point Bill Milliken appointed Jim Ryan to take his place,
correct.
Right? Okay, so what was the climate of the court at the time? Were there differences ideologically between certain of the justices and others? Could you crystallize, is there any particular case that you, or cases that you can think of that would kind of sum it up?
Well, you know, you asked me before about the liberalism of
G. Menon Williams.
G. Menon Williams, and there was one case that had been argued before the court before I went on, but the opinion had not been published, and in fact the court had not ruled on it, taken a vote on the opinion. So it was brought up for discussion. And Soapy had written the opinion. And it was a case that, a workers' comp case in which, applying strict legal terms, Soapy's opinion awarded the workers' comp proceeds to a woman who was a bigamist and whose husband in the bigamy, the second husband had died, and she was awarded his workers' comp proceeds. And I really found that
over the top.
That's a polite way of putting it, Bill. I thought it stunk. And
then what? Wasn't there even more to the story?
Well, yeah. Subsequently, she goes through the comparable process again and again.
With a third husband.
Yeah, again recovers. And those cases are printed in the Michigan volumes of our case law.
And that bothered you a little bit.
Yeah, it bothered me.
Okay. It's 1976. You're running for a full term. Very exciting year. You've got Michigan's Jerry Ford, incumbent president, running for re-election, opposed by Democrat Jimmy Carter. You've got Don Regal running as the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in a very controversial campaign against the Republican Marv Esch. What do you remember about that campaign in that year? Did you have any debates? Were there any issue differences?
No, there aren't issue differences running for the court.
For the court.
Because you can't say, given this case, I would vote that way, because you've got to make your judgments on each case individually. And so there was no debate. I don't know. I worked hard in that campaign, but I could not take all the time. I had duties on the court, and I didn't want to let. I thought it would be fatal to let my tasks suffer. If I had opinions to get out and so forth, I wanted to get them out. So I didn't campaign full time, but I did campaign.
Here you are, the old party chairman, and you don't feel you can campaign the way you'd really like to, because you got to attend to your judicial duties, right?
Anyway,
and you might be criticized if you weren't tending to them.
Yeah. And Blair ran a good campaign. He was an attractive person. It may sound like a broken record, but Blair Moody and I were never antagonistic to each other. We got along. After I was off the court, after he defeated me, he came down to Jackson, where I was employed as general counsel of Consumers Power Company, to have lunch with me. And so, I mean, you know,
sure.
it was a very civil.
Very civil. Well, another thing is, that must have been very disruptive for you, because while you were on the University of Michigan Board of Regents, you could still be a partner in the firm, Foster, Lindemer, etc. Then you had to give all that up to be appointed to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Then you're only on the court for about a year and a half. All of a sudden, you lose the election, and, you know, it's very difficult to pull your whole law practice back together, right?
Yeah, it was, and the firm invited me to come back. But in that year plus that I was on the Supreme Court, my clients that stayed with the firm had been served by other lawyers in the firm, and I thought that it would be terribly disruptive after that period of time to come back. So I thought it probably best to look elsewhere for employment of some kind. And at that time, I got a call from Al Amond, who was CEO of Consumers Power Company in Jackson, which was only 25 minutes away from Stockbridge.
Right.
And he came out to Stockbridge to see me, and anyway, I was offered the position of general counsel, vice president and general counsel at Consumers Power Company, and did that.
For how long?
I did that until I reached the mandatory retirement age of 65, and then I retired, and I went back to the law firm on an of-counsel basis and worked in that capacity for several years until my wife Becky died. And
from that point on, you really weren't immersed in politics to the extent that you had been the entire previous portion of your life. You were back into the practice of law. You might have been interested in politics as an observer. You weren't really engaged in politics by that time, right?
I think that's a fair assessment.